So by using data to have a good and detailed understanding of where your organization is currently and where you want to be in the future has now given you an insight into the gap that needs to be closed. And here are some things you need to keep in mind while preparing a strategy to close this gap. As we've seen in our data, you first need to identify situations where future demand will exceed future supply. So make sure that you are looking at all of your numbers through the lens of the job market in that location, the kind of costs that there will be for hiring, and making sure that your numbers are not significantly higher than what is easily available. Have a good idea of situations where future supply will exceed future demand. So as we saw in the case of Mexico, where we had additional people and therefore our supply was greater than what was required, we now have the opportunity to modify our plans to optimize this availability. And in this case, what you would want to do is, as an organization, really see whether it is worth it for you to lay off some of your valued resources in one location only to replace them with new hires in a different location. Because each of this process of hiring and firing has significant costs, and more than that, has repercussions on the overall culture of the organization and employee morale. So this is where you are in your basic understanding of the gap within your organization. And now you can start using this data to prioritize your most mission critical gaps. And what that means is that you always have to start from somewhere. And which is that place that you start off from? As we've discussed before, typically you will have certain timelines associated with each of these requirements. So you would want to prioritize those requirements first. Similarly, there could be programs that are more important than other programs. So you have some must-haves and you have other good-to-haves. It's quite possible that program Gamma is much more important than program Delta. In that case, you would want to prioritize that hiring over the other one. Similarly, you would want to define your critical job competencies. So in our data set, we saw that we have 3 roles within this company. You have the manager, you have the consultant, and you have the developer. You need to see as an organization which are your critical job competencies. So while your organization might have a certain policy for a manager to developer ratio, you still need to be aware of the fact that this ratio could be tweaked for a short period of time while this hiring is being done. So if it is really important for you to have your consultants and developers on board first in order to get a project up and running, make sure you prioritize those hirings before the manager hirings. Always have the right communication channel set up so that you're able to share your requirements with the sourcing and hiring team. What we've done so far is essentially an exercise in forecasting and a gap analysis. This needs to actually be relayed to the teams who will use this data to plan their own strategy for searching for these candidates in the job market and then taking them through this entire process of hiring them. So make sure you give them enough lead time to be able to themselves scale up their own team if required for these new hiring requirements, and also plan their strategy for new markets that you are entering. Always ensure alignment with local economics. So see your expansion plans through the lens of cost arbitration, through the lens of job market availability, through the lens of ease of hiring, and make sure that you are fully aware that there are differences in cost when hiring between different geographies. There are differences in finding people when hiring in different locations, and some roles might be more expensive than other roles, or might be more or less easy to find than other roles. Always budget for expenses. And what this means is not just expenses for new hires, which of course is a direct cost of additional wages, but also operational costs. So there are expenses associated with the entire sourcing and hiring process as well, and make sure that you are budgeting for those. And finally, it's really important for you to collaborate with all stakeholders so that you can set the right expectations about meeting these demands. And what that means is that your stakeholders also need to be aware that there is a certain time lag involved in a plan and the actual execution of the plan. So keep this conversation going on. Make sure everybody is fully in touch with what is being done and regular updates are being provided. Make sure they're also in alignment with you about the kind of assumptions that you're using in your calculations. These assumptions can be, for example, your understanding of what proposed expansion is, what the average attrition rates are, what it means for us to have a buffer. For example, a really critical project might expect you to have planned for a buffer in case the attrition is more than the average attrition. In that case, you need to have that data provided to you well in advance so that you can plan for it. And keeping all of these things in mind will help you have the best strategy and make sure that you are well set to meet your future goals.